Welcome to the Lady Jaye Meat Dudes podcast. I'm Evan.
I'm Tyler. Charlie.
Man, you guys can't look at me straight when I do that. So,
Guy Smiley over here.
this is big time today. You know, today we're here to talk about meat labels and really the best way to seek out good meat, because we want to help you make the best meat decisions. And right now, it's not that easy. So that's why we brought in our resident meat expert, friend and colleague from Preservation Meat Company, Cian. So Cian personally seeks out some of the best farms here in the Northwest. We are so happy to be a part of his whole ecosystem. And he's been in the meat industry for quite a long time. So Cian, welcome. Thanks for being here, man. Hey, yo.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Thanks
and-
for having me, you sexy pies.
Nice.
Really?
There you go.
PG.
PG, yep, except for when Tyler swears. So hey, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Give us a quick summary of your meat background, and let's get this thing going.
Okay. So I've been in meat. I'm 41 years old. I've been in meat since I was 24. Started in the industry in 2006, where I helped a small little company get off the ground. Did that for about 9 years, and started Preservation Meat Collective in 2018 with a buddy of mine named Travis Stanley Jones. Big shout out to that guy.
Travis Stanley Jones.
AKA The Rock. is
Yeah.
The
here,
Rock, the
right?
Irishman,
Yeah.
the redhead freckle face.
Stanley Jones.
And so Preservation Meat Collective has been on its mission for the last 5 years. We just had our anniversary 14 days ago.
Happy anniversary.
Man,
That's
yes,
great.
happy anniversary, man. And you know, legitimately, you really personally go out there and find like some of the best farms locally all around here, Washington, Oregon. I don't know how far you kind of travel to, but I kind of wanted to, before we jumped into some of these meat labels, I kind of wanted to understand from your perspective, like when you bring on a new farm, what do you look for? What are like 3 or 4 like criteria that's like, yes, they got to have it, and maybe a couple of, no, I got to stay away from these guys.
So vetting and visiting farms and bringing and onboarding anybody that we are going to be showcasing within our collective. It's almost like seeing a friend, meeting a friend, getting to know a friend. Are you going to be friends, right? Onboarding a farm is pretty much the exact same thing. You shake hands, you kind of look each other in the eye, and you go, "What are you truly doing? You know, what are you about?" And when you go to the farm for the first time, you'll know. You'll know pretty much immediately if this is something that you can stand behind.
Like what do you see? Like when you walk on the farm for the first time, what do you what's something that jumps out to you?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. I went to a farm for the first time about a month and a half ago, and the animals were knee deep in their own filth.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, that's kind of a big thing.
That's a big strike.
Yeah, that pretty much just kind of hits you in the
That's
face.
a no, right?
Yep,
That's a
yep,
no.
yep.
Okay.
I'll give you another example. We've purchased a few of our fleet vans in LA, and I personally flew out there and drove those vans back. Well, on the drive back from LA, there's this massive conglomerate beef farm that as soon as you fly or drive about 10 minutes north of LA, something hits you in your face. Like, I'm telling you, somebody smacked you, right? Like, so hard. And it is the smell of cow poop.
Wow.
Straight up cow poop. Now, if
You know
that
what he's
doesn't
talking
tell you,
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
if
Oh,
that
yeah.
doesn't tell you if you should stay away from that farm, like, so things are very obvious.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
If you've ever been to a farm, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. See,
Well,
okay.
for us, back in a while ago podcast, we talked about it. One of the questions was, what is it that you look for when you walk into a butcher shop, and what makes you feel like you're going to get a quality experience? I can understand it's probably about the same thing, but we're not talking about
Identical,
we're talking about a
though.
farm,
Yep.
right? Where there's dirt and animals and shit,
Yep.
right? So
Oh, yeah.
you kind of have to weigh that out, right? Or there's got to be levels of that, right?
Best examples to that, Tyler, is I'm Asian, right? So I get to say this. You go to an Asian grocery store, you know, that is super sketch, and it smells like fish has been spoiling in the back for 3 weeks. It's identical. You just know, right? I think if you really use your best judgment, you'll kind of know.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've been in it for a while, so you can probably see those things a lot faster than.
Yeah,
in
we
some
can
of us
break
too.
things down a little bit more, but it's pretty self-explanatory.
Sure.
Well, let's do so. Let's get into some of these labels because you were over here last week and we were talking a lot about different labels and we were just talking about meat in general. I had such a great conversation that we were like, this next time on the podcast we got to have Sienna on and we got to talk about this stuff. So labels of meat are super hard to understand. So let's kind of dive into some. Tell us kind of what is legit and what is not legit, and let's explain some of these labels. So when the next time our consumers are out there looking at beef, they'll understand a little bit better what they should be looking for and what they shouldn't be looking for. Okay. So let's start off with the big one here: pasture raised. What does pasture raised mean?
Well, pasture raised, if you actually look at the true definition, means that the animal was raised out on pastures, right? And we define pasture raised as it being out on pastures as its entire life.
Okay.
Right? No confinements, grass, bugs, shrubs, poop, insects. Especially if you're talking about poultry, that's what you're looking for, right? Then there's obviously grass-fed beef, pasture-raised beef, things like that. Pasture-raised, forest-raised hogs. So basically, its entire life out on the pastures, in the wilderness, on and farm.
And that's so you said that we say it's 100% on pasture, right? But like the USDA, there's not really a certain like percentage, right? From the USDA, it's just kind of like.
Is there some technicalities of how long that animal has to be on the pasture before it's taken to a lot or whatever to be qualified, quote unquote, a pasture-raised animal?
So that's where it gets a little bit hairy, right? Under the USDA definitions, right, and how they use certain verbiages, access. There's a lot of verbiages, words in the USDA that will, in quotations, and so you kind of have to look at the definitions of what the USDA is actually using, and then what a specific program, farmer also uses to define what their program is about. And that's where it gets a little bit convoluted.
I'm sure, and it seemed, doing a lot of this research, I was looking at it, and there's a lot of like third-party, associations and like nonprofits and things like that. So it's like, oh, this nonprofit pasture raised company says you are pasture raised, or I'm pasture raised certified by these guys and these guys. And so it seems like a lot of it could be some pay to play, like do small farms, are they able to even say this when it comes to like a big certification? Like that kind of, that seemed like that kind of played a big role in it.
Oh, absolutely. The the political nature of these certifications also, like how do you certify a farm if you've been there once in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Right? Like what does that look like?
That's that's tough.
I mean, that's like saying I've been to this amazing restaurant one time and it's the best restaurant in the world.
3-star Michelin.
Forever,
right? Forever.
Yeah, right.
And so you can use a bunch of different analogies, but I think that some of these national certifications are I don't want to use the word a joke, but they've kind of become silly.
Yeah, I understand, man. But so our stuff, or I say our stuff as we're part of Pure Country, but
we feel like we're part of
or the stuff
you guys are.
The stuff that you bring us is pasture raised, right?
A lot of the stuff we bring you guys is pasture raised. We're very selective in terms of what we look for regarding our animals. So not everything is pasture raised that we do, right?
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
So our biggest goal is first and foremost is support the local agricultural community, right? And so a lot of stuff spends a lot of its life out on pastures, and then we do a lot of feeding, a lot of finishing. Our duck program is 100% pasture raised. Our pork program is they're in open hoop houses, exposed to the elements out in the open.
Yeah.
And so our beef program spends probably 80+% of their lives out on pastures, and then they're put in open bunker feedlots, which I actually got a number today. The open bunker feed pens are about 10 times larger than the average commodity feed pens, right?
Okay.
So we're more focused on supporting the local economy and bringing in like super sustainable high-end meats to folks like you guys.
Yeah.
Versus again, the pasture raised is a great element to support, but it's also not our biggest focus as well.
Okay. So let's jump to the next one here. Let's go to hormone-free and antibiotics. That kind of whole debacle, right? I know it seemed kind of crazy how some animals can be hormone-free. They can be like, what was the other one? The no hormones administered. There seems like there's a lot of labels with antibiotics and hormones. So you want to kind of jump into those two?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's have some fun. So first of all, why would you use hormones and antibiotics in the first place?
Well, when an animal gets sick, just like humans get sick, the farmer has to figure out how to save that animal, right? And sometimes a lot of times in big ag, when you're pumping animals, feeding hundreds of thousands of animals, the percentage that happens, you're going to have sick animals, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about massive scales, that's why hormones are typically used, is because when you're talking millions and millions and millions of animals, I believe probably 20% of those animals will eventually get sick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So that's why you would use antibiotics. What about hormones?
Same thing. Yeah, same thing.
When I think of hormones, I think of like how the chicken used to be like, 2 pounds and now it's like 6 pounds. And does that have anything to do with it? Like pumping hormones to make it grow faster?
I believe that's a different type of hormone. The hormones that are given to animals are because they're pumping out the animals too fast, right? And so animals, just like a bodybuilder, can grow so fast. And so because they're pumping them so hard to grow so fast, some of them get sick. Yeah. And so they basically have to control that sickness by giving them these hormones and antibiotics.
Man. So hormone free. Do you know what does hormone free mean?
Again, different classifications, right?
Yeah.
In our world, we don't go anything beyond never ever.
Yes.
And never ever is no hormones ever administered ever from birth to finish.
Yeah.
So they call that never ever. They call that ABF, antibiotic free, hormone free.
Okay.
And so you kind of want to stay away from all of the other stuff, those gray areas, right? The all natural, which I think we'll probably talk about.
Then there's no hormones administered. Yep. So that one real quick. That one is it's that the animal has been given no hormones 120 days prior to slaughter. They can write no hormones administered. So they can be pumped with hormones, and then they're like, okay, well, let's cut it for a few months, and then we'll slaughter them.
And they call that a withdrawal program. So basically, when the animal is killed, there's no more traces of this product. Yeah. And so that is a classification of hormone-free.
That's crazy. Yeah. I just love, like I'm reading a lot about the USDA, and it says, according to the USDA, beef can be labeled as hormone-free if the animals have never been given hormones or if they have been raised in a way that meets certain standards for withdrawal. And I was just like, withdrawal times. And I was like, that seems kind of just, what are these certain standards? Or if they've been raised by, like, it just seems there's so much gray area with all this stuff.
And I believe in that one of those classifications, too. If it spent maybe 20 or 30% of its life in outside, then it's also put in a different category if it was given hormones or antibiotics as well. So there's all these tiny loops per category, and it all gets lost.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. And don't worry, guys. We're going to tell you how to pick good meat at the end of this. So I know there's a lot of just gray area, but it's just crazy to really dig into this and kind of realize how many different labels are put on, or different names are put on these labels to really influence your buying. And,
Absolutely.
And it's just insane. So, all right. So let's jump into certified organic. What are our thoughts on certified organic?
Thoughts on organic? Yeah. Well, I remember back when it was kind of a hot topic for just the average Joe, right? You saw organic come to the supermarkets, and there's a whole little section of blah blah blah. So we were on Vashon Island at the time, and had a bunch of small farmers that, you know, this was like the big thing. So we're like, why aren't you certified organic? Like that's the thing right now. And they're like, do you know what it takes to be certified organic? Like, no, I don't. Please tell me. It was like some ridiculous number of years that they had to have, you know, USDA come out and pH test the soil, and you have to use all the natural pesticides and stuff. And like, you know, like when these people are trying to learn that stuff, like, what if they fuck up and lose their whole crop for the summer and like whatever? So, I mean, I don't know what that.
It's a very expensive process.
Yeah, and it costs a lot of money to get that certification, right?
Yeah.
So for small farmers, it's like they can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just a label, right? I mean, I guess it's better than not having it, but
It should be
if you
good.
stand behind what you're doing and it's like you think that you're doing the right thing and you're caring for the animals anyways, it's just a label, right?
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of these labels are kind of for the big producers, right? That have the money to spend. And I heard a story about organic where this farmer was like, I'm not certified organic because my fence post is I use a lacquer or a stain on there, and if the cow happens to walk up and lick that post, it's not going to be 100% organic, so I don't have that label. But if I don't use that, I have to chop down a forest every single 2 years to replenish my fence. So like, what's better? What's the give and take? I think that's kind of what we're trying to get to, is like there are these small farms that maybe don't have some of these labels, but they don't need to because they're doing the things the right way, and they almost don't need to like keep proving it over and over. Hey, we're certified organic, but no, we raise chickens in this little coop over here, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where that's the whole premise of this conversation is something like organic. We talked about how do we vet a farm, and when you see all of that and it looks right, it's clear, it's there's no smoke and mirrors, right? You see what you get.
Yeah.
And that's the important piece of actually like seeking the right farm, the right beef producer, the right hog farm, right?
Oh yeah.
And not hiding behind the organic certification, not hiding behind, hey, we're, you know, this or that, and trying to actually putting it all out into the world and just knowing that we're supporting this farm that's doing the right thing. You don't have to have this, that, or that, because I think that's where big ag has come and kind of messed it all up, right? They're doing things so poorly and so bad that they have to have these certifications for someone to go, oh,
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
And it's all jumbled up and messed up anyway.
Let me ask you this question. Talking about that farm earlier that you said you went and visited, and the animals were standing in knee deep in shit.
Poo-poo.
Could that farm have been certified organic if they did what they thought they were supposed to do?
100%.
That's the problem, right?
100%.
So there we go for our listeners and the people that are going to ask the question. I'm asking the question myself in my head is, how do you know when you go to the store, you're looking around, you're like, oh, this chicken says certified organic, it must be good. But is it? Like, how do you know that for the common person to go out and to retail and buy something? Like, there's no way to look through that label other than the stamp and know that that animal was properly raised.
Absolutely. It's actually very, very challenging, especially if you go to large retailers. When you
Right.
go to large retailers, you know, they have to feed the masses, right?
Yeah.
These large retailers
Sure.
do, let's just call it $1 million a day, right, in sales. Well, what farmer can they buy from that sells X amount of organic chickens a day from a small farm?
Yeah.
So they have to look to these larger conglomerates that says, hey, well, this is an organic chicken program from this farm. And then it's just hidden behind a label, right? And so one of the best ways to do it is actually to shop smaller, to shop more local,
Yeah,
right? And then to
totally.
actually get to know your butcher shops, you get to know the person at the counter, and then build that rapport, and have them tell you the questions, because smaller local is typically always better, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right, and that's one thing we've talked about before, is how do you trust your butcher, right? You walk in,
I hope so.
you trust us. We're a small, teeny tiny little operation, but we can tell the story.
But we have to prove it, right?
We
Like, I don't
know-
just trust you.
We know where it comes from.
Yes.
We're starting to even realize the carbon footprint, like all of that stuff. We can tell you tons of stuff that you probably don't even want to know.
Yep.
But that's just like, I guess that's the difference. You can't go to gigantic grocery store and the butcher back there's like, what are you looking for?
Yeah. A lot
If
of
they
these
even have a butcher.
a lot of these
Or
grocery
the-
stores
the
will
meat
have
cutter, I should say.
photos of the farm, and then you go, okay, well, that's a photo of one of the farms that's feeding your system, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
But in reality, how many different farms are actually feeding that beef program, right? And so that gets lost as well, right? Because they promote one farm, but how many farms are a part of that, in a sense, brand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sucks because I wish that we could look at that label and go certified organic. Like I want my meat to be, raised that way and have access to the outdoors and be clean. Like that's what we're all kind of looking for, right?
You want like a little kid's book attached to your chicken at the store. You can open it up and be like,
Yes.
it's Henry.
Right? What was his
and
name?
his mom was...
No, but I mean, I want to look at the label and go, okay, this is raised well and it's certified, but it's very convoluted. It's very
Picture book.
gray. It's very,
Picture book.
picture book.
That would be
That's
cool.
cost effective.
What we
Absolutely.
love is like, maybe a month and a half ago, we harvested an animal from a very special farm in Colfax, right? That animal had a name. The farmer named that animal.
Wow.
We knew exactly where that animal came from. It was 100% pasture raised, and it was literally, I don't want to make this sound cruel, but it was almost a pet, right? That this family had for many years.
Wow.
And that's cool. Like that's truly knowing the source.
That is one sad day for that
That's-
for
yeah.
that
But
farm.
it lived a tremendous life.
I'm
right?
telling you,
Yeah.
I have that in my repertoire. Bruno was out on the farm on Vashon, and I had to kill the steer that I saw be born and fed it bottles and like
Wow.
watch this animal grow, and then I had to slice its throat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow, dude. Like honestly, like how
it was
and-
messed up, and
and-
I almost didn't want to
well, yeah.
do it anymore.
You're a human.
I almost didn't want to do it anymore because I loved this. I would go out and see him and feed him grass, and like as he got bigger and whatever, and then Kurt's like, "Today's the day." I'm like, "Ugh."
But you know that it's going to be fully utilized. It's going to feed.
Yeah.
It's going to feed X number of people, and that's
We
that's
did
why you did it.
Bruno justice.
Yeah, that's a good story. That'll be a great story for TikTok. I can't wait to post that. Okay, this one, I love this one because we had a great discussion about grass-fed. And, a lot of people, since we did our Wagyu podcast, some people are like, no, grass-fed's the only way, blah, blah. Okay, if you like grass-fed, you like leaner meat, that's awesome, man. Some people like more marbled meat. Some people like Wagyu beef. Some people like grass-fed. It's your preference. But what is the whole grass-fed system? What does that even mean? And let's talk about what we were talking about last week because I thought that was so interesting.
It almost seems like the organic phenomenon that we were talking about earlier. Like
It's very
years
much
ago,
so.
right?
Very,
It's like
very much so.
people read about it or hear about it, and they're like, "Oh God, I got to only eat grass fed now because it's so much healthier." And blah 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 blah.
They're actually they're very right. Grass-fed beef, high in omega-3s, right? But the problem is as the world of grass-fed has grown, people have started to create programs to supply the world with grass-fed beef, and as any business grows, they start to figure out the loops behind what that actually means and how they can kind of get away from it. And I don't know if you guys have had this where you've eaten a grass-fed steak and you're like, oh, that's not very good. And it's because most of the time it's not, right? Most grass-fed beef that you find in large grocery stores are actually animals that are raised indoors, not indoors, but like in feedlots, fed hay, grass silage, not out on pastures.
Right.
And this goes back to the whole pasture grass-fed. To me, grass-fed beef should be pasture-raised,
Yes.
right? Because that's the healthy attribute and the life cycle of an animal that's eating grass, right? Healthy grasses, nutrient-rich grasses, high-energy grasses. And grass-fed beef, if you talk to any real grass-fed farmer, grass-fed beef should be harvested twice a year,
Oh, wow.
spring and fall. And that's when the grasses are and this is Pacific Northwest farmers, obviously.
Okay.
But that's when the grass is the most nutrient-rich, right? The highest level of energy. And that's when they're basically getting fat. They're actually naturally getting fat. They're not being force-fed other things. They're literally feeding themselves naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
that's true grass-fed beef. Any real farmer will tell you that that's the optimal time to harvest grass-fed beef.
So if I'm getting local, I'm in Washington, I'm getting local grass-fed beef for Christmas.
That's
What-
not frozen.
That's not frozen.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean,
'Cause of
we don't
the-
want to be. Yeah. We don't want to deal with frozen. But but most likely that's going to be not raised and slaughtered at the correct time. It's going to be fed something different. You think, or what?
Yeah, I think it's really going to be case by case
Mhm.
because there's certain parts of the region, certain parts of the Pacific Northwest that are very lush
Mhm.
year round.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys know this, but Sequim gets the most amount of sun in the state of Washington than any other part of our state.
Wow. Shout out to
So the
Squim.
question is, if you can raise
crazy.
grass-fed beef out in Sequim, could you have amazing grass-fed beef year round? I don't know. Maybe we should get in touch with some farmers out in Sequim, right?
Wow.
But
Yeah.
if you're talking about grass-fed beef in central Washington, that's year round. I mean, that place gets a foot of snow
Yeah.
2-3 months out of the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get good grass-fed beef at that time in central Washington? Probably not. So I think it's really location basis,
Mhm.
but I think people just need to look a little bit deeper into where their grass-fed beef is actually coming from and seek out a small farm, and that small farmer will probably be able to give you the real details on how they're doing it, what they're doing, what they're feeding it,
Yeah.
and how often they harvest it.
And again, we're talking about gray matter here, right?
Yes.
Again, right? Grass-fed technically is 70% of their life, 65% of their life they're on grass-fed, and then they're finished at a lot or whatever, right? What's the certification?
So I think the small farmers really adhere to true grass-fed beef, but I think the big companies that have created grass-fed beef programs are really kind of blurring the lines on what they do.
Sure.
Like, for example, corn is actually a grass. They say it's a grass, right? Even though it's a grain.
As long as it's on the stalk or something like that,
Yes,
right?
and so you
Wow.
can feed
Right.
an animal a corn silage. So a corn silage is the entire stalk, right? Ground up. It could have kernels in there. It could have everything. It could literally be 50% corn.
Wow.
And you can feed
That's-
that to an animal
that's technically
and
grass.
call
It's
it
a
grass
really
fed.
big grass.
Right? Like corn silage.
Damn.
That's a grass. That under the USDA classifications, they can call that grass-fed beef.
So you should look for pasture-raised grass-fed, right? Because
Yes.
we were researching something that said you want the cattle to engage in their natural behaviors and consume a natural diet, and that seems like if they're pasture-raised and grass-fed, that kind of seems like some of the best of both
Yes,
worlds.
I believe if you look for that will kind of help determine that it was actually a more honest grass-fed program.
Yep, and there are some third-party organizations like the American Grass-Fed Association that has their own standards and certifications, but at the end of the day, those are probably for the big guys, right?
Yep.
I mean, your local yokel farmer is probably not paying that money to be certified. So-
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about natural beef. Natural beef. Doesn't that sound crazy? Like there's
Sounds
a label
delicious.
for natural beef. Like what did they call that 100 years ago? They called it goddamn beef.
They called it
right?
meat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before you jump into it, I was blown away researching this because it's basically, it says it's minimally processed, no artificial ingredients, no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, or other synthetic ingredients. It's got to be raised without antibiotics and hormones and fed a natural diet. But I was like, are people pumping like food coloring and additives into all this stuff? That just seems crazy to me that you need to say this is natural beef. What is unnatural beef? I mean, commodity beef for the most part is pretty much unnatural beef.
Again, there's so many gray areas here. I think that's going to be the big
Answer
word of the
this.
day. It's too many gray areas. So knowing a bunch of different big growers that feed larger companies, larger brands, I think what I've been told is that the word natural just means minimally processed. And so once you kill an animal, that is a natural beef,
Okay.
natural pork. And so it doesn't really matter what if the word natural doesn't mean it wasn't given hormones or antibiotics. It just means it was minimally processed.
Wow. So if it's written there on the label, little skinny letters, natural beef.
Yeah, and I think that's the old word that has been now used probably since like the early 2000s. That's when that word became popular.
Okay.
And so it's kind of come and gone, but you do see a lot of that in the grocery stores because I think it captures people's attention.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just funny when you really break it down. Like every animal should be natural. Like that you're eating, that you're consuming. It should be natural. I freaking hope so.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I want to know who comes up with these trends, right?
Oh, man.
Organic,
Big egg.
antibiotic free,
Well, I mean,
Big
there's-
natural. But what's the next one? We got to get ahead of the curve here,
Dude. I know, man.
right?
Jeez.
Hashtag.
If we process
Good
Charlie
Lord.
tomorrow, he would be naturally harvested.
Yes. Yes. He's been good.
Antibiotic free?
Natural
I
diet.
take a lot of ibuprofen.
Yeah.
Oh, no, no.
I don't know. Look at that beard, dude. He shaved this morning.
So don't take ibuprofen for 120 days, and you'll
we'll
be
Then I'm
good.
hormone free.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey.
Delightful.
All right, let's talk. Last one, man. Let's talk about some beef brands and really how their names can manipulate your buying decisions. How their big brand names can manipulate your buying decisions.
Absolutely. I think this is probably the most challenging one for us, especially as a company that's truly trying to support specific farms. We are pushing and promoting, specific farms, transparency, traceability, right?
Yes.
And the big brands, the big companies out there, I mean, and they're everywhere. They're all over the country. And they're saying, hey, we're harvesting, animals from this location, and this is where your beef comes from. And so that's a huge smoke and mirrors, right? It's like, okay, so you're promoting that this is a Pacific Northwest program. But those animals could be coming from Canada. They could be coming from Nevada, Mexico, Hawaii. There's actually programs in the Pacific Northwest that actually ships on barges, live animals, and that's Pacific Northwest beef from Hawaii
Because it's processed.
because it's processed here.
Is there an X amount of days, like we're talking about antibiotic free, is 120 days?
yeah,
Is there
I don't
X
think
amount
so.
of days that this animal has to live in the Pacific Northwest to become that
I
Northwest
don't.
beef?
That's a question I'm not sure of. But if you
Hooves hit the ground and it's
yeah,
Yeah.
Welcome.
W beef, baby.
and that's the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
Is just trying to figure out where our meat truly comes from.
Yeah. It's just, those big brand names, man, can really change the way you look at things. It's crazy, man. So at the end of the day, I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's not like they're doing anything bad. Let's
Yeah, totally.
They're feeding the world, but I think what happens is how they're promoting it and
Yeah.
what they're saying. I guess that's where it's a little bit frustrating for folks like us, right? When we're really promoting specific farms, and then the other people are saying, "Hey, we have local meat as well."
Yeah.
And when you say you have local meat, like where did that actually come from? And that's the question.
Yes, and that really boils down to traceability, right? Traceability matters. When I was doing all this research to see all what these different labels meant, it all kind of went back. My mind went back to like know where your beef comes from, traceability, birth to harvest, all vertically integrated, right?
Yes, sir.
All of the, that really, really matters. That makes a big difference because now we're not getting beef from over here and calling it whatever. So that's one thing that our consumers can do to just know where your meat comes from, right? And shopping local, buying small, and so I guess at the end of the day, I say at the end of the day a lot. Sorry. Let's say I live in a big city. I live in LA, and I'm not in the beef industry, right? And I want to eat clean meat. What are some steps I can take to get me going, like in the right direction, right? I'm in a big city. I don't know anything. I listen to this podcast. I'm like, I want to start eating better. What can I do?
Well, I think the world now has Google, right? Let's Google this.
Heard of it.
Let's Yelp this. And I think if you just do research on where you are and where you can find the best products. That's probably your first biggest step, right?
Absolutely.
And then go to the folks. Go to the folks like you guys, and then meet the butchers, meet the owners. Look inside. See if there's, a carcass hanging.
Mm-hmm.
See if there's any commodity style boxes, right? In our world, there's packer boxes, right? Like look at what they're cutting. Are there boxes that are from the big four, right? The big four, we all know that they supply most of the world
Right.
with meat. So Google that. Google the big four. Are you seeing boxes in their coolers that are from the biggest packers in the world?
Yep.
Right? If you truly want to learn, do the research, and it'll put you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, right. Is every single piece of meat the exact same size? That's when I go to some places, I'm like, wow, all those are like exactly the same. That's
Yeah.
a lot of them too. Okay, so what are you said? Going to your local butcher shops, shop local. That's a big thing. Traceability matters. Visiting the farm, that's a lot for a lot of people,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to go out and visit a farm. But what are some questions you can ask those your butchers, or you go into a grocery store, or probably in this case, you want to go into a small shop or a butcher shop. If you really want to eat lean or eat well and understand where things come from, you probably want to go to at least a butcher shop.
Yeah, 100%. And ask the questions. Going back to your questions, ask did this come from any specific farm?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where is this farm? Right? If I wanted to visit this farm, could I possibly go?
Mm-hmm.
You guys are pretty intimate with what we do and know the farmers pretty well. We got farmers coming to dinner
On Saturday.
on
Yeah,
Saturday
yeah.
here that you guys work, really closely through us,
Yep.
and
They're coming to
that's
party.
intimate, right?
Mhm.
You don't, like you said, you don't need to meet the farmer,
Mm-hmm.
but the question is, can you go meet the farmer?
Ooh, I like that. Can you go meet the farmer? That does mean a lot, right?
Right.
Like you probably can't meet some of these the big four. You just walk on the farm. Hey, a lot of those places wouldn't even let you film going in there.
Oh
right?
no,
Like,
absolutely.
they're like, hell no,
Biosecurity
bro.
is
Get outta here.
insane with large production farms.
Yeah, man. No, that's wild, man. So, circling back, one of your main suppliers is Pure Country Farms.
Mhm.
Part of the whole ecosystem here. How do they fit into some of these labels? We've kind of explained it, but let's bring it all back to what would be on a Pure Country Farms label if they needed to have a label?
Yeah. So Pure Country is a 5th generation farm.
Mm-hmm.
Huge family operation, which literally every single family member is involved.
Yep.
From raising the animals to operating the processing plant to managing the processing equipment, driving the trucks. They're fully vertically integrated, right?
Yep.
And so they were actually the first hog farm in the United States to become Food Alliance certified as a hog farmer.
Wow.
It's challenging for them. They are actually probably the largest Washington hog farmer in the state of Washington.
Wow.
It's because it's really hard to actually raise hogs in Washington State.
Why is that?
Land value is really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Most hog farms and hog programs are fed corn, grains.
Yep.
And as we all know, corn is prevalent in the Midwest because that's where majority of it's raised. And so it's just really, really expensive to create hog farms here on a bigger scale anyway, right? So
Okay,
there's
okay.
tons of small farmers that we also work with in Washington, but those are micro growers, right? In comparison to the big guys.
Yeah, man. So, can you go meet your farmer? I like that. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
Are they actually?
Are they actually
Are they actually a
farmers? Is it an actual farm?
Yeah. And the cool thing is, we probably work with about 45 little micro growers here, and I would say we have visited every single farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every single farm.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if anyone can actually say that.
That's great, man.
So-
And that's why we appreciate what you guys do up here at Preservation. And we're happy to be a part of that whole ecosystem, man, because we get to feed our customers now get the best meat, and they know, man, they're walking in here going, give me some of that Pure Country ground beef. They're all over it. They know the name brand, man. So
How many times we hear now you guys have ruined me. You've ruined. I can't buy meat anywhere else. This is
Yeah.
it. And we're like,
I know.
yeah, us either.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I won't go.
Oh, don't
If I
say
go-
don't say anybody.
I'm just saying, if I go out to eat, if I go out to a dinner somewhere, I want to know what kind of beef they're rocking, because I'm not gonna eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
not.
only a
Yeah.
few places.
Because
we go
like
to.
we're spoiled fucking
Yeah.
rotten.
And that's the cool thing. Good meat actually tastes good.
Mhm.
Like, we did a cutting a few weeks ago where we tasted almost every single steak off of a cow.
Yeah.
And it was this restaurant that had never had our beef before. And we actually tasted about 17 cuts. And then we threw in a commodity prime grade ribeye just to kind of mix it up.
Yeah.
And everyone said that the commodity ribeye was their least favorite.
That's crazy.
It was a blind tasting.
It was a blind tasting.
awesome, man.
None of the in front. It was a front of the house staff, back of the house staff, ownership,
Yeah.
and they all picked kind of unique, different cuts as their favorite. But every person said that their ribeye was their least favorite.
Which
Wow.
I guess could have backfired on you.
It
if you
could
did
have.
if you did it the wrong way.
Yeah,
it could have, right?
We're like,
But
why
I was
would-
shocked.
Ribeyes,
Yeah.
yeah. But they could really they must have really been able to taste the difference, right? Because everybody loves a ribeye, right? You see that big piece of meat is visually stunning, cut into it. You're like, oh yeah, this is gonna taste great.
Yeah.
If they
They chose the top sirloin.
they chose Charlie's top sirloin.
Shit.
All right. Well, get to know your farmer. Can you visit your farmer? Those are some big takeaways today. Traceability matters. Know where your meat comes from. Don't be fooled by the labels. They're meant to be good, right? I mean, they're meant to be, good and safe. We want to eat certified organic and everything like that. But don't be too fooled by it. Really understand where your meat comes from. Ask those questions if
Yeah.
you know.
Do a little research. I mean, you don't have
Hey,
to nerd out like we
Do
do.
your
Yeah.
own research.
Look,
I mean, we go.
give it 5 minutes. Look a little bit deeper into it,
Yeah,
and
right.
you'll probably
Go-
get a
go to
little
page
bit
2
more
on
information.
Google.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do we have any finishing thoughts, or should we wrap this baby up? We went long, but it's all right. It was good info.
What?
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
There's no hair gel in your hair today, Cian.
The wind is blowing. I thought you were gonna.
Beautiful.
I
It's
thought you
still
were gonna
chilly.
have your locks out too.
That's a natural haircut.
All natural haircut.
All natural.
Perfect. No hormones. All right, guys. Well, let's sign it off for the Lady Jaye Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
Tyler.
Charlie.
See and so. Boom.
We'll see you next time. How do I start recording? Is that recording? That is recording.
Looks like you're recording.
Does it look like I'm recording?
Looks like you're recording, bub.
Jim, are we good to go on your end? How we looking? Perf. A little shout out to Topo Chico. If you head to topochico.com, you will find all of their exclusive products, their Lady Jaye Meat Dude products. We're coming out with a nice sweatshirt, Topo Chico. Thank you.